Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the third episode of Comics Inc., your comics podcast here from BigRedBarel. We're a man down this week. Unfortunately, Ryan couldn't make it, but don't worry, I'm joined as ever by Rick.
Hello.
And we are here to kick behinds and also take names.
Exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Something involving bubblegum as well.
Yeah, of course, yes. We are all out of bubblegum, or at least mostly out.
We threw it away because the dentist said cavities are bad. We're getting old now, so we need to look after our teeth a bit more while we've got them.
Speaking of things that are old and terrible, Rick, would you like to talk about Shazam?
Oh, yeah. This is going to be fun. So, DC have cancelled Shazam, the Monster Society reprint from 1943. They were doing a hardcover reprint of it, and now they've cancelled it. So, between 1943 and 1945, DC ran a story featuring Shazam that became one of the first ever serialized comics, historically making it one of the most important comics in history. However, it also contained depictions of people of colour that, although deemed acceptable at the time, are actually massively racist.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely one way of saying it.
The depictions include Shazam owning a slave called Steamboat, who looks like a minstrel and speaks with a stereotypical unintelligent southeastern drawl, and a group of Mickey Rooney-looking Japanese men with slanted eyes, sharp teeth, thick glasses, and I've put sharp teeth twice in my in my notes by accident.
They are very sharp teeth.
They are.
So
I think one of those sharp teeth was supposed to say bowl cuts, but having two sharp teeth emphasises how sharp those teeth were.
They really were. It's really not good.
An official message was sent to comic book retailers which reads, DC cancelled Shazam with the Monster Society of Evil Deluxe Edition HC. After careful consideration, DC announces that the Shazam, the Monster Society of Evil Deluxe Edition HC is cancelled due to concerns over its contents. This title will not be resolicited.
Good. I mean, it's always a difficult thing, isn't it? Looking at attitudes that people had, from back in 70 years ago now. It is difficult to look at things that people did back then and then kind of look at them with the way we know that it's not good to be racist now. But at the same time, I feel like reprinting this feels like trying to make money off of that awfulness again. Personally, I'm glad they didn't.
I'm on the fence about it. On one hand, yeah, you look at it and you're thinking there's absolutely no room for this now, especially how we look at things in 2018, like things like racism, stuff like that. We're cracking down on it, this generation.
We'd better be.
But at the same time, I think it's kind of important that it's out there. Now, in the 90s, when the Looney Tunes were on DVD, Warner Brothers had Whoopi Goldberg come on and basically give a speech about some of the episodes that were coming out, right? Because Warner Brothers may have made a couple of questionable decisions in their time with the Looney Tunes. So I'm going to read to you what Whoopi Goldberg said, okay?
Okay.
So she comes on and she's like, hello, Looney Tunes are amazing. You're out to watch some cartoons. However, the Looney Tunes and their irreverent brand of humour are products of their time. Unfortunately, at the time, racial and ethnic differences were caricatured in ways that may have embarrassed and even hurt people of colour, women and ethnic groups. Now, nobody intended it, but that's what happened. Now, some of the cartoons here reflect some of the prejudices that were commonplace in American society, especially when it came to the treatment of ethnic and racial minorities. Now, these jokes were wrong then, and they are wrong today, but removing these inexcusable images and jokes from this collection would be the same as saying they never existed. So they are presented here to accurately reflect a part of our history that cannot and should not be ignored. So that's how I feel.
I agree with that as a statement and a policy, and I think that is the best way of addressing anything like this, like be it Looney Tunes, these old comics, like anything by Disney, any kind of old, especially when it's children's entertainment that comes across like this. My only issue with it in this specific instance is that, as a first point, this wasn't in production anyway. This would be a thing that DC was specifically going to reprint to put out to sell as a deluxe edition hardcover, as it says in the solicitation information, which means my issue with it is the attempting to make more money off of it. It would definitely be bad for them to pretend it never happened and do a Coca-Cola and say, this never happened, this was never a problem, what are you talking about, who are you? But I think the issue comes in when they decide to reprint it in a shiny new edition to be like, oh, hey, look at these great old things that we present. Obviously, they may well present there may be an intro or comments within the text, like the reprint itself, to say that this was bad. You would really hope so. But I think the issue with this is just the fact that they're trying to then republish it to make money from it now. I think if they were just going to release this as a thing and have it on their website or put it somewhere, like give it to schools and put it in museums as like teaching and examples of things that were bad and unquestionably happened, but we don't do any more, I would be more forgiving of it, I think. But I think in its current situation, I'm glad that they just sacked it off entirely.
So you're not against them putting it out there, just they have to do it under a different context.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think I have no problem with them saying they made it. Like, a fair play to DC to say, we made these, they're very racist, I'm sorry. I think that's a good stance to take on it. But I think I just have an issue with the way that they were, not even the way that they are dealing with it, because they've decided to pull it, and I kind of understand that decision. But the way that they were dealing with it before, I think, was the problem. At least for me.
Now, what is interesting is, I mentioned Looney Tunes before, Warner Brothers.
Yes.
DC Entertainment is a subsidiary of Warner Brothers, who created the Looney Tunes.
That's true.
So it seems like there's two different stances on it, because what's happening with this, like with the importance of it and everything, is it feels like what Disney did with Song of the South. Because that's an incredibly important movie in history. It won an Oscar for Best Song, and it was the first movie that Greg Toland shot in colour, so he's the cinematographer from Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
But content-wise, Disney have gone, we're just going to put this in the... Oh, we've locked it away in the vault. You're not having that anymore.
It's not the worst way to go about it, certainly, but that's clearly not, we're not selling this because we think it's bad. It's, we're not letting you see this because it makes us look bad, which is, again, a different, equally problematic distinction, I think.
What if they edited the characters and the images? Or do you think that's then just playing with what it is and it's not becoming an accurate representation of that comic anymore?
I think that's too much like trying to sweep it under the rug to completely flat out. It would be one thing if in the newer Shazam comics, then that Billy had a friend who was black, and I mean, there's no non-racist way to call him Steamboat. You know what I mean? Like if they reintroduced like a dynamic of Billy Batson having a friend who was black, and that could be a fine and good thing to have as part of their comic books. But if they just took these old 40s comic strips and redrew them and changed the perception of those characters, I think it does an equally bad job of portraying what they were at the time, because then it becomes, oh, it's just Billy's like friend that he has, and oh, you know, the villains are, I mean, I'm looking at this dialogue, there's literally no way to make this less racist, really, but because it's for those of you not seen sample dialogue from the they're supposed to be Japanese, I think. Villains includes, you know what, I'm not even going to read it out loud. It just occurred to me, if you really want to see it, find it. If not, your life is probably enriched by not knowing. But yeah, I think that would be maybe a step too far in the denial of it.
Yeah, that would probably be worse than just not releasing it, because instead of denying that it's there and releasing it, they're changing it and going, this is how it's always been.
Exactly, yeah, what are you talking about?
Yeah, there was no racism in our book. Look, yeah. he's a well-paid equal of Billy's who speaks incredibly intelligently. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting one.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. I think it's interesting that they made the decision, certainly, again, as a subsidiary of Warner Brothers, which is a company that has, you would think at this point, a policy in place. But I guess DC operates in enough of a separate entity at this point that I'm sure no one from Warner Brothers is directly overseeing the decisions about reprints of 1940s comic books, I imagine.
Yeah, they're probably trying to hide it. That, or they're actually in cahoots with Disney, and Disney are like, just do what we do.
Yeah, just lie. It never happened.
Just lie about it. Just fire one of your directors for bad jokes. It'll take the heat away. Put it out. Yeah, if they can put it out, and then, like, fire Affleck. And then the heat will be on that. This will be on store shelves. No one will notice it.
Yeah.
Changing the subject slightly, or at least changing the publisher. Do you reckon this means that we're going to stop getting, like, Tintin is pretty much going to be dead in the water for a new generation.
I've got to imagine no, because there are plenty of Tintin books that don't have such explicitly racist. Like, it's only in ones like Tintin Goes to the Congo and the other one where he goes to Asia where things are really bad. And like the one where he goes to space, I think is fine. So I imagine. Now. Well, for now, yeah. I mean, I think for the most part, those things are probably going to survive relatively unscathed. And also, like with the old like Tintin books, that is such an obvious part of them at this point. Really, if you're knowing anything about Tintin, generally speaking, it means that you know that the stuff in it is racist or was racist. You know, when it was first made. I don't think the recent movie had any of the racist stuff in it. I hope, but yeah. So I imagine probably not, because it's too ingrained in Tintin to the point where I think people have forgiven it a bit. Whereas there's decades of Shazam comics they could reprint that don't include Steamboat and the Black Dragon Society of Murder.
Is it the Tokyo Torture Temple?
Yeah, that's... yeah. Oh,
Jesus, yeah. No, but it'll be interesting to see if more stories like this come out as different publishing houses try and bring some of their older stuff and like look in their vaults, then go, yeah, we can't put this out.
Oh, it'd be interesting to see like the kind of titles that we don't see anymore. I bet Captain America's got some doozies.
Superman too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's the World War II era heroes.
Well, that's it. It was all, propaganda and stuff.
So what have you got next for us?
So next, recently on the subject of other superheroes, Batman. In the recent issue of Batman, which is issue 53, the plot concerns Bruce Wayne trying to convince a jury to let Mr. Freeze, who's been wrongfully arrested, off the hook for the crimes that it turns out he didn't commit. The general upshot of this is the whole issue is Bruce Wayne talking to a crowd, set of juries in a deliberation room, and his argument, Bruce Wayne's, hinges on the notion of Batman's fallibility and the loss of faith. Now this obviously has a lot of things to do with it. It's a lot of things to do with the most recent storyline, kind of the wedding of Batman and how that all kind of played out or didn't. But a lot of people have been looking to the things that the explicit Bible quotes and the way that the argument's phrased to say this proves that Batman's an atheist, which I think is kind of an abstract issue, really, like the notion of whether or not Batman believes in a god, Christian god specifically, as opposed to any other. I think there was never any question of whether or not Batman was Hindu or Muslim, which would have been fascinating if it turned out he was, but I suspect that
Buddhist.
Yeah, I mean, Buddhist is probably the closest, really, with all this kind
of... Yeah, I imagine that he'd actually be Buddhist compared to anything else.
That seems like the kind of thing. But clearly, between the writer and the kind of history of the character and the kind of background that he's supposed to have, kind of Christian faith seems to be the thing that at least the character was raised in. So following this kind of conversation, Tom King, the writer of the comic, posted on Twitter, so the quote here, lots of people saying Batman 53, which I wrote, shows Batman is an atheist. That's not how I read that comic, but I don't think my reading of it is the most important one, which I think is an interesting, like, not a lack of statement, but a way of sidestepping putting any kind of personal feeling about it. I think I can see, having read the issue now, there's definitely a suggestion that I think you could take it both directions, to be honest, whether or not you feel like he believes specifically in Jesus Christ or if he just has a kind of overall faith in humanity. But I mean, the various religious assignations of superheroes is kind of strange in a world where explicitly gods exist, because it's hard, I imagine, to be an atheist when you hang out with Wonder Woman.
Yeah, and Superman and
exactly, yeah.
Martian Manhunter, you've been to Apocalypse.
Exactly, yeah. There's a whole bunch of new gods, which is an extra step of things, which I always think it's an interesting thing when people debate whether or not, gods exist. There's a similar line, the first Avengers movie, where one of the characters refers to Thor and Loki as gods, and Captain America replies, "There's only one god, and he doesn't dress like that," and then he jumps out of a plane. It's very good. You should watch the Avengers if you haven't. I don't know if anyone there has not watched the Avengers, but...
I mean, watch the Avengers after you've listened to this.
Yeah, obviously.
Obviously, or pause it and come back, and we'll talk about the Avengers for 20 minutes.
We'll carry on in real time. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, the notion of kind of faith and religiosity in superheroes. I think your reading of Batman as being Buddhist is probably the closest to the mark.
Or agnostic.
Oh, well, yeah, obviously, you gotta...
The fact that he's lost faith, his parents were murdered in front of him, and he fights psychopaths on a almost hourly basis. I'd lose faith as well if that was my life. but he's seen enough and been around enough to sort of not be atheist.
Well, that's it. I think, you can only see so many impossible things. There is a good line in the issue that I'm probably misreading, but generally it's saying that he put his faith in Batman, which I think proves Batman's a god, and I'll be opening my church sometime in the next year.
The Church of the Bat.
Yeah, Bat Church.
It's a good church. I'll sign up. I'll come and sing hymns.
Yeah, there you go. See, it's not really hymns as much as it's just the theme tunes for various movies.
No, Batman.
That would actually sound amazing if you had like a full choir to do that.
It would be pretty amazing, just like a full church room full of people doing it.
God, get in touch. Religion, I suppose?
Weird that this turned into a new story.
Yeah, that is also very strange. But I mean, people would love to discuss any kind of facet of a character, and something that I think also a company like DC owning a property like Batman means they want to keep things kind of as specific, controversy free as possible. Because if Batman said outright, just stated he was a Christian or was a Buddhist or was anything, that would generate a significant amount of publicity and conversation, which they probably also want to avoid.
Bruce Wayne just stands there and goes, "I'm a Scientologist."
Oh no, I was going to say, has anyone written that story, but I've realised no one can because they would be sued instantly.
Yeah. That'll L. Ron Hubbard starts writing for DC.
Is he still alive?
I don't know.
If you're alive, L. Ron Hubbard, get in touch.
Yeah, we'll have a word with Jim Lee, see if we can get you a writing position at DC. Get Jeff Johns involved, it'll be great. You can have John Travolta in your movie adaptation.
Because I think technically this is all libel, according to the Church of Scientology, so we should probably move swiftly on.
If it gets us exposure, I'm willing to put that offer in.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, I agree with you.
But yeah, so speaking of moving swiftly onwards and kind of the Bat family of comic books, there's something else that happened related to the recent Bat casting. Rick, do you want to take that one?
Ruby Rose quits Twitter due to Batman casting backlash is the headline that I've got written down here.
It's very snappy.
It is. It gets the message across, and now I'm going to elaborate on that to give you some context.
Lovely.
So, on the 7th of August, it was announced that actress and model Ruby Rose would be playing the role of Kate Kane / Batwoman in the CW's Arrowverse, set to debut in December 2008 during the franchise's annual crossover event. However, because this is the internet, it didn't take long for the Orange is the New Black star to be hit with a tirade of abuse from angry nerds around the world via Twitter, causing her to leave the platform. Comments ranged from her being too gay to not gay enough, not being Jewish, her acting ability, and some saying she's too big a name and the role should have gone to a lesser-known LGBTQ actress.
Yeah.
Great. So, once again, Twitter really driving home why we don't have nice things anymore.
Yeah, Twitter's just... Stop it, Twitter.
Now, personally, I think this casting's fantastic.
I would have said I agreed with you.
I think Ruby Rose looks the part. I've only seen her in a couple of films, but what I've seen her in, the action that she does is great. She's awesome in Triple X3.
I was going to say, yeah, that's surprisingly it's a good part of a not fantastic movie.
Yeah, but she's awesome, and I think she'll be great in the Arrowverse. When it comes down to acting ability, have you seen the Arrowverse? No one's winning an Oscar. I'm sure she'll be fine.
Do they hand out an Oscar for doing the salmon ladder? Because if they do, then the guy who plays Arrow is probably in for that one.
Yeah, Stephen Amell scares me with what he can do. He does. I look at him and I'm like, well, there's no point going to the gym, is there? I'm never going to be that perfect. I can't even do one pull-up. I'm far too fat now. I went to America for a month.
I don't even have that excuse. I couldn't do a pull-up now anyway.
But the thing that really stands out is when people were saying that she isn't gay. She's massively openly gay. And the other thing that's annoying as well is the whole, but she's not actually Jewish. That should be a Jewish actor. That's not how acting works. Now, in some cases, get somebody who, to represent who they're playing properly. Like, I don't think Scarlett Johansson should play a Japanese woman as much as she'd like to. Going back to an earlier story, I don't think blackface should be a thing in films. Hire black people. But when it comes down to this, like, could you imagine going for an audition? You're perfect for it. What religion are you? Oh, I'm Catholic. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, was the issue surrounding the issue of the character versus the actress being Jewish to do with an issue of faith or an issue of culture? Because if it's whether or not Ruby Rose is specifically observantly of the Jewish faith, then I can completely understand why that's ridiculous. That's just a belief. That's a thing you can act. I can understand if the issue is ethnicity. I can understand why people would feel a little bit sidelined, I suppose. I don't know which it is. I confess I don't know nearly as much about Batwoman as a character as I'd like to, other than a few bits and pieces that I've read. And she seems like a really good character. So I'm looking forward to, not that I watch much Arrowverse TV, but this seems like the kind of thing that would get me to watch at least a couple of episodes. But yeah, it's kind of difficult to know. I mean, Twitter, being the screaming hate vortex that it is kind of impossible to pick out any kind of meaning, isn't it, really?
It's just one of those platforms where it doesn't matter what we get. Like, this should be an absolute triumph for representation at the moment. Like, the CW and their representation in characters in that specific franchise is phenomenal. It's absolutely fantastic. Like, Constantine's bisexual. They made Captain Cold gay. Sarah Lance, bisexual. They're not afraid to have LGBTQ characters. The majority of their cast isn't white men. There's a mix.
Yeah, well, obviously.
And now you bring in Ruby Rose, who is actually gay, to play a gay character. And people are like, oh, no, but it's not enough. You need to... It's like there's a Jack Whitehall's playing a gay dude in a new film and everyone's flipping out because he's not actually gay.
Yeah, I mean, that seems fairly reasonable to me.
It's like, yeah, that's the thing. But this, it's like, come on. And the argument that, oh, she's too big a name.
That one seems very strange to me. Like, those people unaware of how acting works. As an industry, like, I feel like no one should be complaining that Tom Cruise is too successful to be in Mission Impossible.
Yeah, and it's dumb as well. Like, names bring views in, and the Arrowverse, it ain't doing so well.
Is it not? That's it.
The last few seasons of Arrow, especially, it's not doing great.
I mean, how many series are they on now? It's got to be 7 or 8 at this point.
The new one's season 8. No, it's not. The new one's season 7.
I gave up on after series 1 when John Barrowman wasn't in it anymore, and I was like, well, what's the point, really?
Oh, John Barrowman still turns up.
Oh, he still turns up? Oh, well, you've sold a...
Big character.
Oh.
Best character.
I was going to say, he was definitely the best part of that first series.
Yeah.
As opposed to medieval Batman, which is who the Arrow character closely resembled in that first series.
But, yeah, this just made me angry because... as we spoke about at length during the first episode, I'm a big Star Wars fan. And to see Ruby Rose quit Twitter in the same way that Kelly Marie Tran quit Twitter, the same way that John Boyega almost quit Twitter, because people are looking at these actors and just giving them abuse for being who they are, is disgusting. And I think anyone who attacks someone for how they look, what their sexuality is, whatever... absolute scum of the earth and should check themselves.
I think that's a very reasonable and very polite way of phrasing what I'd put in slightly more aggressive terms. But yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah, it does my head in. And to see somebody else get chased off of a platform like this, it's disgusting. People should be ashamed of themselves.
Again, and there's the treatment of someone just who wants to play a character, like an obscure comic book character. 10 years ago, if anyone had told us they were going to make a Batwoman like TV show or put her in a full TV show, we'd have all lost our minds, and now some people are just getting angry about it.
Yeah. Let's talk about something nice, Reuben.
Yes, let's talk about something nice. Rick, do you like video games?
I'm quite fond of video games.
Good, I am as well, and if you're listening to this on the actual website, odds are you are too. For those of you who own a Nintendo Switch, there's a new service supposedly coming to the Nintendo Switch in November called InkyPen. The idea of this is sort of has the kind of Netflix for comic books kind of vibe that Marvel Unlimited has already had, but this one is going to be targeting some more independent publishers, places like Valiant, Dynamite, IDW. So neither of the big two, but actually that's sometimes a nice and pleasant change. It's interesting that the service is coming to Nintendo Switch specifically, rather than anywhere either of the Apple or Android app stores or any kind of Windows or Mac application. So it seems there's not a ton of information around available. I have checked out the company website. It does seem like a promising service if they can get it up and running. The price point doesn't seem too egregious. It's about $7.99 of your local currency a month, which for all the comic books you can read, and given enough time, you can probably read a lot of comic books. It seems like quite a generous offer, really. It's interesting that it's coming to Nintendo Switch. Not because of the platform, because the Switch is probably the only console really in a position to offer this kind of service. But it is interesting that Nintendo, to the best of my knowledge, have never really run a service like this. But the Switch, obviously, between being kind of a touchscreen tablet, the kind of thing that people are inclined to take with them on the move, seems like a perfect home for this kind of thing.
Yeah, this is awesome. I love this. I've read into it, watched the trailer for it. It looks great. The publishers that they've got on it, like my household, it's an IDW household. We went to the IDW offices when we were in San Diego.
Oh, lovely.
Went to check out the gallery that they had there. And yeah, this just looks great. My girlfriend, Lena, has a Switch. She is attached to it 24/7 when she's not at work. And she's a big comic fan as well. But she used to borrow comics from the library. So you run out of things to read eventually, don't you? For this price, I guarantee she's going to get it. It's awesome. Like, I saw one of the reports about it saying that they had roughly 10,000 comics.
Yes, that's the reported number.
And then they had the comment going, that's less than half of Marvel Unlimited. So what? So what if it's less than half of Marvel Unlimited? Marvel Unlimited is just Marvel that's 6 months old or older. This is different publishers. This is indie publishers. This is going to open so many new stories and characters and worlds to so many more people. It's going to make it so much more accessible than other avenues. Like, for $7.99 a month, even if you do the month free trial, that there's no doubt going to happen with this because it's a subscription service and that's how they always get you. You're going to people are going to take more risks with books that they're going to read. They're going to look at a cover and read a blurb and go, you know what, I am going to give this a read. It would have cost me, because like trade paperbacks can cost up to 17, 20 quid now. It's getting ludicrously expensive to own the physical media, and people aren't willing to part with money for characters and worlds that they're not familiar with.
Well, exactly. Marvel Unlimited's whole thing is the fact that is arguably the biggest comics company in the world at this point, between, the movies and the animated series and the comic books themselves. They have a brand name. They are probably the name that I would imagine most non-comics interested people associate with comic books, and which is why they have 20,000 comic books or whatever they have on their unlimited service. But yeah, like you say, it's an exercise in risk taking. Like, if you don't know if you're going to like something, if you've already paid your $7.99, I've watched a lot of things on Netflix purely because I already pay for it. And some of those things weren't great, but a lot of those things were fantastic. So it just seems like a win-win overall, really.
Well, it's the same with Spotify. Like, I've listened to so many new bands and artists that I wouldn't have paid to listen to because I didn't know what to expect.
Well, exactly.
But I found new bands that I love through doing that. And I think a lot of people are going to discover new books through this, and this is only going to benefit the indie world. Unless everyone switches to this as the main way that they consume indie comics, at which point they're not going to make as much money as they are, and that could be a problem. But we'll see. But for the most part, I think this is great.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. I don't own a Switch yet, but it's on the list of things, fingers crossed, Christmas present. And, if I've got one and this service is up and running and doing what it says on the tin even, then I will be more than happy to give this my money. It just seems like, especially the Nintendo Switch as well, it's such a sensible... Obviously, Apple own kind of the tablet market with iPads and everything else, but there's, a lot of restrictions and a lot of issues with Apple as a service. If you want to sell things, you more or less have to go through the Apple Store, which I'm sure other companies can already do on their own. But Nintendo Switches, there are millions of Nintendo Switch. It's been like wildfire since its release, and at this point, the ability to just say, our service is available on the thing you already own, which, is the thing that happens with things like DVDs and Blu-ray players with previous console generations. If you can have all the comic books you want on a service that on a machine that you already own, I'd jump at the chance, and I think quite a lot of people will as well.
What I am worried about, though, because this is like a little indie thing, isn't it? This is being created by like a very small team of people. If this takes off, what are the odds that Comixology go, the Switch is a feasible platform to put our service on, and then Marvel will do the same with Unlimited, and then DC with Universe, and then these get left in the dark? Because that'd suck, because if you've just paved the way to put digital comics on a console, and then the big boys go, look what they're doing, and then drown you out the market.
I mean, I think an element of that is probably inevitable if it's a success. And obviously, I hope that InkyPen, they get their thing off the ground, that it goes well, and everything works out great. But there's a decent chance that Comixology, which at this point is backed by Amazon, I think, and as I say, the Marvel with their Disney money and Warner Brothers and DC can afford to put some serious money into competing with it. But I think the thing that they've got going for them, at least at the moment, is accessibility. Like you can put a service on something like a Switch, and other companies might jump onto it eventually, but how much of a base have you got by the time that happens? And if people know that they're happy with, IDW, Dynamite, Valiant, all the rest, there's more services than that as well. Hopefully they can carve out enough of a niche, because, I mean, Comixology, does Comixology offer a subscription, or is it buy per issue? Oh, it does at the moment. Okay. Well, then that, they're obviously competitors, and I imagine some of the titles will probably coincide, but that does seem to be the unfortunate side effect of the subscription model. Just as one point all we had was Netflix, and now there's Amazon Prime, and it's looking like every major film distributor is wanting their own service. It's kind of unavoidable at this point, I worry.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to the Disney service and DC Universe, because I already have Now TV, Netflix, and Amazon Prime. Adding 2 more to that, and then when everyone else starts doing it, it's going to get crazy expensive.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think Amazon probably has the closest. I already have Netflix. Amazon's probably the closest to getting my money, if only because Amazon Prime as a service is something that I would find useful, but I think I'd just probably pass on the rest. There's so much TV, so much media now that I tend to pick one service and stick with it and just get what I can from that.
I think what's going to happen with me with the Disney service especially is when like the whole live action Star Wars series is out, I'll just pay for a month and like watch it all, and then I can cancel it, and then whenever a new series comes out I can get it for that month, binge it. Similarly,
I know there's talk that the last most recent Marvel movies will be the last ones to come on Netflix before the Disney service gets online. But I mean, and it's probably part of their intention, but all they've done in my case is sell me a Blu-ray, because I know I'm not going to subscribe for just one film. It's cheaper, effectively, for me to buy one disc that I can own forever for a film that I'm probably going to want to watch again and again anyway.
But it's the exclusive stuff that's going to get people.
Yeah, that's it.
Because if they do what Netflix do, because Netflix have come out recently with the stance that they're not going to release their films on Blu-ray. If you want to watch a Netflix film, you have to watch it on Netflix. If Disney do that with some of their things, then you're going to get exclusive, like the Star Wars TV shows. If they go, oh no, you can only watch them on our service, that's going to pull a lot of people in.
Yeah, I think that's the content vampire is going to...
Oh, Reuben, the future is expensive. Capitalism's great.
I mean, it's certainly the system that we live under.
Yeah.
I don't have a good segue for this. Do you want to talk about the Fant4stic?
Yeah. So, Deadpool concept artist Alexander Lozano took to Instagram to reveal concept art for how Marvel's first family would have looked in Deadpool 2. What is most interesting about this concept art is it is based around the cast of the 2015 flop Fant4stic. Apparently, the Fantastic Four was supposed to be a big part of the movie when director Tim Miller was still on board. Reuben, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Would you have wanted to have seen the Fantastic Four in Deadpool 2? Starring the cast of Fant4stic.
I mean, why not? I think is the thing. Like, I could not finish Fantastic 4-stick, whatever you're supposed to say that name, because I didn't see it in the movies because of how terrible the reviews are. I started watching it when it was on Netflix, and I got maybe halfway in, and realised that what I was watching was like the Frankenstein's monster of a bunch of different bits of film edited together, which I know is how all films technically work, but there was definitely, you could see the stitches in this.
It was. That movie is like the messed up child of a messy divorce. It was just pulled in every direction.
It wasn't fantastic, but you know what?
It wasn't fantastic.
Sorry. That's, I'm going to pretend that was on purpose now.
By the way, I'm just going to interject for anyone listening who hasn't seen Deadpool 2, we are probably going to talk about some major spoilers in the film, because the points that I want to make about where if I wanted to see Fantastic Four in it, where I would have wanted to have seen them, is going to involve spoilers for Deadpool 2, so you have been warned. But if you haven't seen Deadpool 2 already, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, do go see that. It's good. You can stop now. You can probably just take the rest and we'll see you whenever you come. But go watch The Avengers. If you haven't seen Deadpool 2, go watch Deadpool
Avengers,
2. And then
watch Deadpool 2, then come back.
Yeah.
We'll wait, and it'll be brilliant. We'll all be on the same page, and everyone will get the same jokes. It'll be marvelable. But marvelous. That was an unintended pun as well.
It's getting better and better. I felt that, of all the issues that I had with Fant4stic, I didn't actually have a problem with the cast. I wasn't a fan of whoever was supposed to be playing Doctor Doom. He wasn't great, but I thought the rest of them, in particular Michael B. Jordan, I thought they were really good. So I don't have an issue with those guys reprising those characters to be in that movie in Deadpool 2. I think that would have just been a kind of funny joke, and probably a finger in the eye to Marvel, which was, kind of part of Deadpool's whole appeal, really, is to be like, well, this isn't a Disney Marvel movie or even a regular Fox X-Men movie, so we can do whatever we want.
Now, I would have liked to have seen them in the film in the role of X-Force.
Oh, okay.
Because remember what happened with X-Force?
Yeah, it doesn't go well for them.
No.
Actually, that whole sequence was hilarious.
That sequence is worth watching the film for. And that's one of the reasons why I love that movie, because if you go back to the trailers, they make X-Force look like a big deal. They had to have shot scenes specifically for the trailers.
Yeah, just to put in the trailers to confuse us all.
That's going to take a chunk out your budget.
I mean, yeah, they definitely...
That misdirection.
They went down on it. I think it's fair to say that they chose a bit and committed to it kind of ridiculously.
And it worked so well. And I have a feeling that that's where they would have been.
Do you think?
Yeah.
My only reason for thinking maybe they wouldn't have done that is that, again, spoilers for Deadpool 2, because X-Force all die in ridiculous and extremely funny ways. But it's funny because the X-Force characters they choose are second stringers even by the level of X-Force. They're not even, the characters you would necessarily associate with kind of high level.
They're like Z-listers, aren't they?
Yeah, they're real fair play to them for really plumbing the kind of back catalogue to pick up on great characters to brutally murder. But they are specifically very low rent, very minor X-Men characters. So I think Fantastic Four might have fared slightly better in that situation, just because they wouldn't want to explicitly and seriously kill one of their big franchises. Even as much as the most recent iteration of that franchise didn't go over well, they probably want to keep the card to play if they want to.
But I think that would have been a really funny middle finger to Marvel. Because if you remember during that whole debacle, the reason that we haven't had Fantastic Four in the comics properly for a long time is because Marvel ended it because they didn't want Fox to have the license or something. It was something like... because they were trying to get the licenses back. Yeah. And they didn't like what they were doing in the films. So they cancelled all of the Fox-owned characters and stuff. So no one would give a crap about the Fox films. And it does feel like if they would have done it in that way, that would have been a really big middle finger to Marvel, because it would have been, oh, you're cancelling the comics to sort of pull interest away from those characters. We're just going to kill them off because we can, because these are our characters to play with.
In a fashion that probably would have reignited interest in the Fantastic Four as a set of characters.
Yeah.
I suppose the only issue with, not the issue so much, but I wonder if, considering specifically the very explicit and violent deaths that the X-Force characters rather suffer, and the more previously family-friendly nature of the Fantastic Four as characters, I'd have to wonder if they were probably slated to appear in a way that was better in keeping, because I feel like you can't have, like, the Mr. Fantastic say the F word in front of people. I feel like that's the kind of thing that executives will object to as being off-brand.
No, but you can have him getting hit by a bus.
That's true, but then he probably would have survived.
But he wouldn't have survived if he went in that picker, you know, in the chipper.
Oh, that's true, in the wood chipper. But then I suppose that's maybe also part of the joke, isn't it? Because better superheroes probably would have survived the assortment of comedic endings that the X-Force characters all suffered.
And at least we got to see a live-action Shatterstar.
We did! He did everything we wanted from a Shatterstar, I feel like.
I know I've wanted for a whole 3.5 minutes of my life.
I think the only sad part about that is the fact that they killed Terry Crews' character as well.
The fact that they killed Brad Pitt.
Oh, well, yeah, but I mean, that was worth it for the joke.
Best cameo.
That was, yeah.
Best cameo. Blink and you miss it, literally.
I'm trying to imagine the situation where they had to explain, like, Brad Pitt's agent had to sell him on the concept of just putting on this stupid uniform, grabbing a wire and pulling a face like he was being electrocuted.
To be honest, I have a feeling that Brad Pitt would have approached them, or if it was just a conversation between him and Ryan Reynolds in a bar, because...
That's true, actually.
the Jim Jeffries show, they know each other. And Jim Jeffries made a joke about him being his weatherman.
Oh, okay.
And he was like, yeah. So Brad Pitt ended up being the weatherman because of a joke that Jim Jeffries made to him. It was something like that. They wanted to get him on the show. And they were talking and they were like, oh, Jim's people were saying like, oh, we could get him to come on and talk about one of his... charities and stuff. So Jim went to him with that and he's like, nah. And Jim's like, you could be my weatherman. And he's like, yeah, that sounds amazing. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of those kind of situations where it's like, oh, we've got a character that we need cast in. He's going to be invisible for it and you're going to see his face for half a second while he's being electrocuted. Brad Pitt would have been like, I'm in.
I mean, to be fair, Brad Pitt probably has enough money and enough credibility at this point that he can probably say whatever he wants to do.
Yeah.
And everyone kind of has to just roll with it. So I suppose, you know, if you had that kind of profile, I'd probably agree to be in Deadpool 2 for 30 seconds.
Yeah, I would have done it for free as well, because I'm an attention whore like that.
I probably would have asked for slightly less than Brad Pitt, but I feel like I could have gotten paid.
I'd have been happy with a sandwich. But that's just me. Now, I don't know about you, Reuben, but I think that's it for the news.
Yeah, I think that's about all we've got, unless something incredibly dramatic happened in the last time since we've been recording, which I don't think it has. If it has, if something terrible happened in the gap when we were recording this on Wednesday, please don't at me to tell me. I probably already know.
Yeah, but also, if there are any stories that you'd like us to cover in future episodes, feel free to do that. We'll give our Twitters away at the end. You can message us on Twitter. You can leave comments on the actual Big Red Barrel website where some of you might be listening to this, because we want to know what you want to hear, and we will talk about anything as long as it doesn't make me angry.
And I think this episode has proven that we will talk about things that make you angry as well.
This has been a very heavy episode, hasn't it?
It has a bit. I mean, to be fair, I think we started with Steve Ditko, so I think the podcast has really been on a trajectory.
Welcome to Comics Inc., the happiest comic podcast on the internet. We talk about all the happy things. Right, we've got a bit of time left.
Yes.
Let's change the mood. Let's talk about some things that make us happy. I want to know what you've been reading, because we haven't spoken to each other for a couple of weeks.
No, it's been a little while.
What have you been putting in your eyes?
I have been putting a variety of things in my eyes. It's kind of been a day. I've kind of reread some old things. I've got about 3 newer titles that I'm reading at the moment, so hopefully I'll be able to talk about all those once I've actually finished them. But I've been re-going, and one of the most recent things I've been rereading is, so I can find it on the shelf, is Thor, God of Thunder. We were talking about this as well before we started recording. It's very difficult to exactly describe where in the series of Thor I've been reading, because as you might expect, comic book numbering traditions are all over the place at best. So the issues that I've been reading are from Thor, God of Thunder, collectively in the trade paperback, The Last Days of Midgard, written by Jason Aaron. Pencils were done by Isad Ribic, and then in issue 24, Augustin Alessio, and then colors by Avi Sorsina and Augustin Alessio, and letters by Virtual Calligraphy's Joe Sabino, with an extremely talented creative team on all the rest of it as well.
What's the story arc?
So, the story arc, it's actually part of Jason Aaron's very long, ongoing, and still current, I believe, run on Thor, concerns a variety of things. Part of it concerns the story of the recent female Thor, the inheritor to Thor's hammer after he lost it from doing some bad stuff that he shouldn't have done. And then also a kind of time hop thing going forward all the way into the 5,000 years into the future, to where Thor, as we know him, has become the All-Father, so he's taken Odin's place, and has some grandchildren as well, the granddaughters of Thor, who are characters, and the present-day story concerns the poisoning and damage that's happening to the Earth, and the future story concerns basically a fight between Thor and Galactus, which is...
Sounds pretty awesome.
It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my entire life. You want from Thor, you want something kind of epic in scope and scale, and this really is it. I'm flipping through the pages now and sort of just overawed by the beauty of it all. But yeah, the idea of kind of Galactus and Thor going toe to toe on a kind of barren, wasted Earth. They're punching each other and throwing each other through planets and setting fire to stars. It's all captured in kind of an epic scale, which I know epic is a word that gets used a lot, but this is definitely a thing.
I mean, it's a god versus an Eternal. Is Galactus an Eternal?
I don't think he's like a capital E Eternal, in the sense that, because I think they have a very specific group of things that they are. Galactus is just sort of a force of nature in the universe, really.
If there was a theme park for Eternals, he would be tall enough to ride those roller coasters.
Exactly. He would be one of the few who would definitely be tall enough.
So I think epic is the only word you could use to describe a fight between a god and a planet-sized man.
It's pretty much exactly. There's a quote from the page that I've got open in front of me that says, "His rage doth burn like 1,000,000,000 supernovas, and his fists do fall with the force of the same." Which is the caption over Galactus punching Thor so hard that he goes all the way through the Earth and explodes the moon.
Oh, that's some Dragon Ball Z level stuff.
It is Dragon Ball Z, all kinds of nonsense.
That sounds great.
It is. It's fantastic, yeah. But they are, it's really, beautiful. I know we were talking earlier about how expensive trade paperbacks can be, but this one is kind of the one that feels like it justified the price.
It's always good when you get your money's worth.
Well, exactly. And then in the back cover, it's also worth looking at because it has a selection of variant covers, which includes Thor as a cat, which is just entertaining to me.
I was going to make a perfect pun, but I'm above it. I am above cat puns.
Are you?
I am.
Because you already made one.
By accident.
Yeah.
Didn't do it on purpose.
So what about you? What have you been reading?
Well, the first thing that I've read that is awesome was Carnage Mind Bomb, which was written by Warren Ellis with art by Kyle Hotz, and it is a messed up book. It's a one-shot, just a single issue story. Carnage is it Ravencroft?
Right.
Carnage is imprisoned, and the psychiatrist is trying to talk to him, and nothing's happening. So the Pentagon sends someone in called Dr. Kurtz, and they send him in to come and talk to Carnage. And what he does is he has a sound gun. So he goes into his cell, basically zaps him with a sound gun to weaken the symbiote, and then injects him with an absolute killer load of vitamin C. Because apparently that disrupts the brain waves, which means that, like, the vitamin C overdose means that the symbiote and Cletus Cassidy can't be together.
Right.
So the symbiote's completely subdued, and Cletus is a little more talky than he is normally. And you kind of get a bit of a backstory into Carnage, who he is, why he kills, what he enjoys, why he enjoys it. And it's a Warren Ellis book, so...
You know what you're getting there.
Yeah, but while he's in while he's talking to Cletus, the vitamin C wears off. And the doctor says to him, so, how do you see the world? And Carnage says, let me show you, and gets one of his tendrils and drills into his head.
Oh, lovely.
And infects him and allows him to see the world how Carnage sees it. And he goes mad and starts attacking people, and then he eventually gets put down, and Carnage just sits in his cell, like, what are you going to do? It's brilliant. I read it late at night, headphones on, and it's so just dark and atmospheric, and Kyle Hott's artwork is phenomenal. It's just really trippy, but it's like a nightmare. It's absolutely superb. And then I went on to read the new Venom story, which is going on. So I've read the first 4 issues of that, written by Donny Cates, with pencils, colours and inks by Ryan Stegman, JP Mayer and Frank Martin. And I don't know if you've been keeping up with this one.
Only sort of tangentially. I haven't read any of the more recent Venom comic books. I'm familiar with the Flash Thompson Venom series, but I haven't seen any of this newer one.
This is basically a new origin story for the symbiote.
Okay, interesting.
And it's absolutely fantastic. So it starts off with Eddie Brock having a nightmare, but it's not Eddie Brock having a nightmare, it's Venom. It's the symbiote.
Okay.
And what's happening is, before existence, there was a being.
Okay.
And then the Eternals arrived in the being's kingdom and started creating life. So this being, I think it's called Null, went to war against the Eternals, killed one of them.
Hurrah!
But then was banished into the Void. But the Void is where he thrives. And the first symbiote was a weapon that Null formed from himself. And he says the weaker children, like his weaker offspring, still remember the sound of the hammer and the heat of the furnace. So that's why sound and fire are the weaknesses to the symbiotes.
Right, okay.
Then he goes on to say that he went on a war with the Eternals until he lost his sword that he made. And the thing that's great is that part was set up in 2000 and I want to say it says 2003, but I think it was meant to be 2013.
Oh, okay.
I think I made a mistake.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is from 2013, and it's from the Thor God of Thunder run.
Oh, do you know what? The second, I'm probably grinning like an idiot, the second you said it was a black sword, I was like, is that going to turn out to be the one? And it was. Oh, so
by what's his name? The God Crusher.
Yeah, the God Butcher. Oh
the
my
God Butcher. It's,
full circle.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
This is the origin story of that sword, and where he gets it from.
Wow.
So if you're, I can hear it in your voice.
I can say sorry. That's just because I was thinking, because I started rereading the Thor God of Thunder run. That's the one that starts with the God Butcher. And that's one of my favourite comics of the last, like, however long I've been reading comic books. And so now you're telling me that Venom, who's a cool character that was cool anyway, links up to the mystery of the, like, one of the coolest Thor villains. You've officially sold, like, I'm just sitting here grinning. You've sold me some issues here.
So then, I'm not going to tell you what else happens because I'm going to let you I'm going to let you find out for yourself. But yeah, you see some panels, and then it says, I fell I fell onto a nameless planet, and when I woke up, my sword was gone. And in the panel, there's a little dialogue box that says, "See Thor, God of Thunder, number 6, 2013." I went, all right. So I stopped reading Venom, and I went and read that, and then I went back to Venom. So I had like a nice little interlude.
That is a very good crossover to have.
But the writing's fantastic, the new ideas and stuff, because apparently there's a bit of controversy about it. People going, oh, but you've changed, he's not just an alien now, he's part of something bigger. But I love it, because it's giving more depth to the character. Like, I've never seen Venom scared before.
That's an interesting dynamic to take with the two characters. Usually it's the human that's the kind of human victim is the one who's scared, not both of them. But
you see Venom afraid.
Yeah.
Like, the symbiote will come off of Eddie, and he's just sort of cowering in the corner, like, is it safe? But you get to see how close they are. Like, they genuinely care for each other, which is a really interesting dynamic, because you always think that, yeah, they're together. Like, they're not as perfect a couple as Cletus Cassidy and Carnage.
No, those two
they have perfect symbiosis. But Eddie Brock and Venom, they want the same thing. So they work together well. But it just looks like after years and years of being together, they've started genuinely caring for each other. And Eddie gets injured, and Venom, the symbiotes, they're like, come on, breathe, keep your eyes open, while he's trying to repair him. There's like little scenes like that, and it gives a lot of depth to both of those characters. And yeah, it's a great book so far, it really is, and the artwork's incredible. It's some of the nicest artwork I've seen. Like, it's the kind of artwork that I like. So I recommend it to you, who got giddy over the God of Thunder reference. And
there's a lot to be said about Marvel continuity problems, but sometimes continuity is good.
Yeah, it was a nice little thing.
Cool. That's very excellent. I'm going to have to spend the rest of my weekend checking that out then, going through the back issue. So that's Venom from this year, 2018.
2018.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Well, is there anything else we read? So you said you were reading the Thor issues as well, the ones that kind of go along with that.
Just that one, yeah.
Cool. Well, that's great. Okay, I think that about wraps us up for this particular issue of Comics Inc. Thank you so much for listening. So again, I've been Reuben. If you want to speak to me about anything that we've talked about here, if you want to push any stories my way, or tell me about any comics that you think I should read, ones that either just kind of classics or ones that you don't think get enough love, you can find me on Twitter at ReubsCubes. That's at ReubsCubes. And Rick, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at StrangePlayRick, or you can see me on YouTube at youtube.com/StrangePlay, where I do video game news and Let's Plays.
Okay, so thank you everyone very much for listening. Thank you, Rick, for being here, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
See you next time, guys. That was a terrible ending from me.
It's good, we'll leave it in, it'll be fine.
Go!
You and your ears are quite welcome
for the podcasting goodness that you just heard.
Why not roll on over
to BigRedBarel.com
for more podcasts,
news, reviews, and videos from the biggest, reddest site on the internet, BigRedBarel.com.
Mark. Do you want to do it again so we say the same word, or?
I don't think it matters.
No, it's just a sound, isn't it?
I really don't think it matters. I trust in Coleman that he'll realise that Sync and Mark mean the same thing.
He's a clever man. He knows what he's
He's
doing.
the smart, and he's so handsome as well.
So handsome.
I know, he's just rugged.
Just powerful. Beautiful man.
Like an ox.
I'm not sure that's necessarily strictly a compliment, but sure.
Like a sexy ox. Hey, baby.
Stop flirting with Coleman retroactively.
Can't help it.
He looks like a sexy
He does
ox.
something to me. It's his pheromones. I can smell them from here.
Oh, God.
I'll make Coleman say, oh, God.